What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to XJW Diaries. My name is Justin. So today I have another special interview for you guys. This time from a very, very cool lady named Carol. And over the course of this interview, she will tell her story about how she came into the witnesses and how she was able to wake up and gain her freedom. Now, one very interesting thing about her story is that she didn't come into the witnesses until she was 27 years old. So this just goes to show, even when you join the organization later in life, a full-grown adult, they can still have a very big impact on you. And it can still take time to recover after leaving. So, I really hope you guys enjoyed this interview. Here's Carol. So, Carol, I know you mentioned that you were not raised in the Jehovah's Witnesses. So, how did you get involved with this religion in the first place?
Well, I wasn't looking to join a church or to become religious or anything like that. I had a regular customer where I worked who knew I was single and I was looking to date, and he knew somebody where he worked who was single and apparently looking to date, and he brought him in to meet me. And of course, we got to talking and got along well. Tall, dark, and handsome. What more could a woman want? And at that time, I was young enough that my instincts, I didn't trust them. So when he said he was Jehovah's Witness, my instincts screamed run. And I opted for tall, dark, and handsome instead of run. So we got to talking, and he suggested that we have me at least look into it, have a short study, and decide what I want to do with it. And I did. I studied with his mother for a while. And when I moved into my first home, he got me in touch with the local congregation, and I started going to the Kingdom Hall right away. They had already picked a pioneer uh, sister, I hate to use the term, to study with me. And we had a study, and it went well. I got sucked in, and of course, um, seemed to make sense to me. All the while, I was still seeing this person who should not have been dating me, definitely should not have had me sleeping over in his room, in his bed, because as a worldly person, that's just what people do when they're dating. And I didn't realize until far enough into my study that that is not acceptable. So I put the end to that when I got to that point. He never did. Um, Finally made it to the end of the study and went through the questions, got baptized. And it wasn't but a week or two after I was baptized, and he broke up with me, stopped seeing me. And I look back on it now and wonder if that wasn't the plan all along. Maybe the elders talked to him, they kind of knew what might have been going on and said, well, continue to string her along until she's baptized. But then within, I think, 6 months or so, he was married to someone, I guess, that he had known for years. So I was kind of deceived from the get go. I mean, deliberately. I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses are deceived, I think, but I don't, they're not aware that they are. And this whole thing that played out was a deception on his part to get me in. But I was in, I was a single mother. I thought this was a good way to raise my daughter. Um, I didn't have a problem giving up Christmas and birthdays. My daughter really didn't have to give them up because she had the whole rest of her family, my family. None of them were witnesses, so she got to enjoy all that with them. But that's pretty much how I got into it. It was because I was vulnerable. I was lonely and I was wanting to be married, and they took advantage of that, which is how I, looking back on it now, know they're trained to do. You look for someone that has some particular vulnerability, and then you play on that vulnerability. And it often works. Often works. It did with me.
Wow. Yeah, that's a very similar thing happened with my own mother when she was first getting into the witnesses after she had me. So it sounds like a very familiar story. How did your worldview change as you were studying with the witnesses? Especially since I think you said you were 27 before you when you came in there. So you
Yes.
you were a full complete adult by then. So how did your worldview change when you came in?
Well, they package it beautifully. I mean, when you see how beautiful the earth is, in spite of the other things that go on that are not so beautiful, when you recognize how limited our lifespan is, and even if you're a very active person in life, there's going to be a lot that you're going to miss out on just because of lack of time. So, having a paradise to live on, never having to die, being able to explore every corner of the earth and, just investigate and learn and enjoy the beauty very much appealed to me. I like the idea that there would be peace and there would be no more wars, that extreme weather wouldn't be a problem any longer. You could live wherever you wanted. You wouldn't have to worry about your house getting blown away in a tornado or pulled out to sea in a hurricane or anything like that. Um, so for me, it made me feel positive about the future, but yeah, it's a trap. It's a dangling carrot, and unfortunately, so many people succumb to it because it sounds good. Jehovah's Witnesses are really good about talking about the churches and how they like to tickle the ears of their parishioners, but that fantasy about, paradise earth and living forever on it tickles the ears. They can't dispute that. That's why they use it. It works.
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually. Yeah, they do exactly what they say the other churches do. It's all about giving you this fantasy. Um, Now you're a first generation witness, so didn't have any existing family in the organization. I know in my family's case, after we got baptized, there was a clear difference in how we were treated from when we were still studying. So did you have that experience where you treated differently after you were baptized than when you were studying?
Actually, not really. My parents didn't like it. They made that very clear to me. Um, and my mom just asked that I please not discuss it with her. Don't bring up that subject with me. I don't want to hear it. And I didn't. And there was never any issue. They never cut me off. I didn't cut them off. It was like it always was. Um, so fortunately, these wicked worldly people have love that is unconditional versus the very narrow conditional love that Jehovah's Witnesses show.
And unfortunately, you had to experience that conditional love when you had to deal with being disfellowshipped. Do you want to go into that story a little bit?
Sure. Um, my whole life, I was kind of a black sheep. I never really fit in, and that kind of made me susceptible to this as well, having instant friends. But I did something that I knew I shouldn't have done. And being the kind of person I am, I'm not one to be a hypocrite, lead a double life, live a lie. I can't do that. It just goes against every part in me. And so I went to the elders to tell them what I did. And they had what they call a judicial committee. I call it more of a sentencing committee. But when I went, it was, I don't know what I was thinking at the time, except that I just needed not to live a double life. I was thinking more about me than the judicial part of it. But there were the three elders. The one was my age, and he had been an elder for years. He was a former Bethelite, pioneer. The other two elders were newly appointed elders. One was older than I was, and one was much younger than me. And this was about 10 years ago. So I was about 43, 45, give or take. And so when I went and I told them what I had done and everything, and I was fully expecting to be disfellowshipped. I didn't have any ideas that they weren't going to, but they kept dangling that carrot in front of me. Well, we really don't want to have to disfellowship you. Are you sorry for what you did? And without getting into the details of it, because it's not a good story, but I'm like, no, I'm not sorry, not at all. And if I were, it's not for you to hear. And I just kept, digging my heels in on that. I'm not sorry. And they wanted so badly, I think, for me to beg and to grovel and to give them this feeling of power over me. And I'm so thankful that I didn't do that. What I did do, though, is call them out on their cliquey behavior and how I tried very hard to be in the middle of the congregation like they always told you to try to be. And I pioneered for a while. I was out service regularly. I tried to, do social things with people, but they often had other things to do and then never did come back around, to say, well, why don't we try to do something now? Which put me in a position to where I ended up in that sentencing committee. And the one elder, the young one, he said, "Yeah, we have this problem in the whole circuit because it was discussed at the circuit elders meeting. So it isn't just here, and it's a problem that we're wanting to address." But the lead elder, the one who had been an elder longer, got very, very angry at him for saying that, and he was saying, "Well, this congregation is a loving congregation. We have a great reputation throughout the area for being the most loving congregation." And he was just so angry that I would dare sully the congregation's name, and this elder was backing me up. And at that point, being newly appointed, both those elders hung their heads. They never said another word after that. They knew that I had tried to reach out to them to do things with us socially, and that they had, pushed us away. So the one elder, he was just irate, and my husband was there during this whole thing. So it's not even my word against theirs. There's two witnesses, me and my husband, and he couldn't believe the way he behaved toward me when all he had to say, "You know what, we're really sorry. We didn't realize that we were doing that." So all he had to say. But he just got his back up and he got real defensive. And so, of course, they did disfellowship me. And I did try to go for a while because I was still mentally in, but, and we changed congregations to see if that would make it a little easier. And it just got tiresome. So disfellowshipped within probably 6 months, I wasn't going and not making attempts to be reinstated.
Wow, wow. Um, so you said your husband was there in the judicial committee?
Yes, he was. With women, the husband can be there. With men, as I understand it, um, the wife can't be.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I think I've heard that before, actually.
Yeah.
Wow, that's an example of where the gender dynamics in that organization. I know you had another example. You want to go into that one?
Yeah. Oh, it's just such a chess game, right? All these sneaky little plays. But there was an elder, and there are a few in that congregation who are sweet, dear, kind, generous, helpful, loving people. And them I miss. I miss them very much. Um, and this one gentleman had been an elder. He was old enough to be my father, and he and his wife would go back and forth a lot. And his wife was very free and unedited with her mouth. And that's why she and I got along so well. She was the one who studied with me, by the way. And I guess a newer elder to our congregation had an issue with that. And so he went and tattled to the body of elders, went to the circuit overseer, and they had him removed as an elder until he could get his wife in line, which I found horrible. I couldn't believe they would do that because of her. And what she did, what really wasn't that bad. Everybody laughed. You know, that's just who they were. That was their dynamic. You know, it was fun to watch.
Jeez. And then he got removed as an elder because he couldn't. That's insane.
I believe it was a few years before he was even offered ministerial servant again.
Wow. Jeez. Jeez. Okay. So back to your story. So you get disfellowshipped, and now you switch congregations. So where does the story go from there?
From there, like I said, we didn't go very long to the other congregation. It was where my husband was from. There was one woman there, very sweet. She would say a brief word or two to me each time she saw me. She was very kind, but it just got laborious. You know, people couldn't talk to you, um, come in late, leave early. And even though I sat with my husband, you know, he would have to walk away from me before people felt comfortable talking to him. And he was more of a coattail rider. Once I quit going, he stopped going. So um, I didn't go for years. I fully intended for a long time to go back, and I would be that one who would be friends with those on the fringes, those who were excluded, those who were looked down upon because they're not spiritual enough. I really wanted to do that because I knew how it felt because I had been treated that way. And so when I woke up, that went down the toilet. It was never going to happen. But yeah, it was a nicer congregation. But again, had I gone there for very long, you learn people, and everybody has faults and flaws, and you're not going to get away from it. So it wouldn't have been any better.
Yeah, yeah. I have a friend that had that same experience and found the same thing. So how exactly did you wake up? Why don't you go into that story?
Um, Somebody had mentioned to me about the child sexual abuse that is rampant within Jehovah's Witnesses. And being POMI, physically out, mentally in, I immediately shut down. The programming kicked in, and I'm like, oh no, 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 that is not true. Um, and shortly after that, and I'm not entirely sure how I came across it, but I discovered the 1947 Awake magazine where Jehovah's Witnesses were excoriating the Catholic Church for their practice of excommunication. And then 5 years later, they adopted the practice and made it more cruel. Because excommunication, all that really does is say you can't partake of the emblems. You can attend, people can talk to you, your family is still your family, and they're just as close and involved in one another's lives. That's just the one thing you can't do. And Jehovah's Witnesses realized what a benefit that was and used it as a control mechanism, as a weapon. And I was very upset that they would become so hypocritical. And right on the heels of that, I learned about their UN membership and saw the documentation. I mean, it wasn't just that I heard about it, I saw the documents. And at that point, I was livid because we're told, you know, the UN is the wild beast of Revelation and Satan's organization. And it was wicked and we don't want any part of it. And here they are, members. So at this point, I was primed for the rabbit hole of CSA. Didn't have to look. You just put it in your search engine, whichever one you choose, and tons and tons and tons of things come up. And it's a deep, deep rabbit hole, and it gets uglier every time I learn something new. And what I find bizarre, once I heard all that, I was just furious that I had been taken in by such a group, that they are as vile as they are. And I don't mean the people, I'm talking the higher ups, the policies, the ones running the show. But they're so judgmental of anything not Jehovah's Witness. And it took me a long time to get over the anger. And then there's the grieving process and all the emotions that go with that. All these years I spent in this, and what could I have done if I hadn't been a witness? And then putting my daughter through that, she was not happy. She didn't take to it. She wanted no part of it. She even remembers, and this is what turned her off completely, when she was still pretty young, probably 10, 12 years old, a young pioneer sister. They were leaving a door together, and the woman wasn't interested. And this pioneer said, well, she's a goat. She'll be gone at Armageddon if she doesn't change. And my daughter did not like that. She didn't like that at all, and she was done from that point forward. But so once I got through all of that, I was like, now what? So do I stay religious? Do I believe in God, or do I not believe in God? Do I go to a church? Do I just, stay home and do my own thing? So there was all kinds of things. The waking up process was a lot of internal investigating, learning me, and overcoming all the negative emotions that were attached to realizing you were duped.
Yeah, yeah. And how did you? That's one of the hardest things to get over, is realizing that you were duped. That's why some people stay in, is they have that realization, and you don't want to admit that. You don't want to admit that you were fooled like that. How were you able to get over that?
Um, I don't know. I'm pretty prideful, or at least I had been most of my life. I'm hoping I'm a lot less so now. Um, See, that's the thing. When you are engulfed in a group like that, three things hold you in: fear, and um, the sunken cost fallacy, and family, because you don't want to lose your family. And I didn't have the family, so that helped. Um, I think the anger and the shock of it all helped me to get over the fear, fear of being destroyed at Armageddon, fear of this vengeful God, whatever fear there is. And because even though I was older and I spent quite a bit of time as a witness, I was still young. And so I didn't have as much of the sunken cost fallacy that a lot of people would have, say, if they had been born in and they didn't start waking up until 50, 60. I can see why that would be a lot more difficult. But I'm not really sure how I was able to get past that, except that I did. But the thing is, I experienced the emotions. I didn't run from it. I let the grieving process play out the way it was going to play out for me. I acknowledged the emotions. I felt the emotions. I'm like, what can I learn from these emotions? How can I move forward from these emotions? And although there's still some anger, it's a different form of anger. The anger is that people are still being deceived, families are still being ruined, people are still taking their lives, children are still being abused. Those things make me very angry, and the organization facilitates this. But there are ways in which you can express that anger in positive ways. So anger in itself is not a bad thing. It's just how do you express it? And so that's what I'm coming to learn now.
So, if you don't mind, can you just go into the roller coaster of the emotions that you go through when you're leaving? Because that's something that doesn't really get talked about quite enough. And everybody's going to go through it differently, but I think that's one thing that we all kind of go through, you know?
Yeah. Well, of course, the anger is there the whole time, but then the sadness, we, you know, these people are being deceived, people you love and you care about. They're being harmed and they don't know it. And there's nothing you can do even to help them. So there's the frustration, there's um, the fear really didn't play in for me. But there is a little bit of fear, okay, well, if that's not the truth, is there a truth? What do I need to do if I want to go to heaven or whatever it is you are believing now? Um, does God care? Is this all there is? So there's those fears and uncertainties. So I just explored all of them as I felt them. I'm like, okay, is there a God? Is there not a God? So I'm playing both of these back in my head. Well, if there's a God, then why this or why that? Um, if there's not a God, then how can all this be here? Because that just doesn't make logical sense to me either in such order and such beauty. So I explored and I did research and got in contact with people that had some interesting things to say that got me thinking in directions I would have never gone on my own. I had never considered and quite frankly never really heard of. Um, but the grief, the loss, the time that I lost, you have to get over that. I still have time. Nobody knows if we're going to have it tomorrow. So, you could be very young and be gone tomorrow, be very old and still have another 10, 20 years. Um, so let's not worry about the time thing. And so just logically thinking through these emotions is kind of what I did. I didn't go and see a professional therapist. This is just what I did on my own. I did look into the Bible. I've read a couple of other books. Well, not read them cover to cover, but I've investigated some other books. And what finally surprised me is my whole life, I had an abusive childhood. So um, I always had this, what I call a rage ball with me, my companion. It was always there. I was always aware of it. It didn't always express itself, but it has in the past expressed itself. Um, but it's just always there, this ball of rage. And one day I'm like, it's not there. It's not there. I went looking. I went looking for it. I could not feel it. I couldn't find it. It's gone. And I don't know how. I didn't ask for it to go. I wasn't trying to be more loving, more kind, or, less raging. It just wasn't there. And what got me to that point was realizing there is a source to life, whatever you want to call it. A God, an alien, whatever. But there is a source to life. And this source is pure light, pure love, unconditional love. And this individual loves us no matter how awful we can get. That is tremendous. You lose all fear when you realize you are loved that deeply, that there's nothing you can do that will make that love stop. It's profound. That doesn't mean that gives you free rein to be a horrible person. It just means that whoever it is, creator, source, loves you. Even people that will never turn their back on their family, unlike Jehovah's Witnesses, but like my family, they didn't turn their back on me. Their love was unconditional. But this is to a level way even beyond that. And that has a significant impact on me and has helped me a lot. Understanding more about this individual who has been hidden from mankind, quite frankly, um, by design, and which is why we find ourselves in the place we're in now.
I think you've already answered the question of kind of how your life has changed since leaving the witnesses, but I kind of want to go deeper into that belief. Not too deep, but a little deeper, because as Jehovah's Witnesses, we believed in a deity that was all about punishment, and that has a when you believe that you're God, that the thing that created you is all about punishing, that that can have a psychological impact on you. That can change how you view yourself. That can change how you view the world around you. So, coming out of that belief system, how has that changed your life and changed how you view the world around you?
Um, I'm far less judgmental. I'm opting for zero judgment, but I'm working on it. I'm not there yet, but I am tremendously less judgmental. Um, I don't need to validate myself or have others validate me any longer. If someone wants to disagree, I'm good with that because that is their sovereign right. That's the thing. This divine love Source has for us gives us the ultimate freedom to be whoever we want to be and to think and believe whatever we want to believe. And it's freeing. It gives peace. There's no worry anymore. I, I'm not worried about how things are going to play out. Um, are bad things happening? Are they looking like they're heading in a bad way? Yeah, but on this level, if you just limit yourself to this teeny tiny level, you're going to be overwhelmed. And so this Jehovah that Jehovah's Witnesses serve, he's insecure. He knows he's not that source of life. That's why he has to have control. That's why he demands exclusive devotion. That's why he exercises punishment on those who he feels have wronged him. The source of life knows, and for your viewers, I'm going to refer to Source as she, just from what I've learned. She knows how we're made. She created us. She knows the bigger picture. And with this ultimate unconditional love, she doesn't have to prove herself. She doesn't demand that you think a certain way, that you even believe in her. She loves atheists and she understands why they're atheists. And the kind things that atheists do, the way they show love, honor her. That's all she wants. She wants us to live with love as our motive. And so long as we can do that, we're, pleasing this person. And Jesus did come to free people from the control of the religious leaders of his time and to represent this God of this unconditional love. And he said his load is light. And that is a light load. Live in love. No other law than that. If you can be moved to do things out of love, That's all you need to worry about. You don't have to, well, avoid this thing and do that thing and, apologize for this, apologize about that. It's good to apologize, but don't beat yourself up with the guilt. That's part of the experience, right? Is to learn and grow. And mistakes are made. You don't grow if you don't make mistakes and learn from it. So, yeah, that's kind of where I am now. I'm still discovering facets that I didn't realize. But yeah, the reason Jehovah's Witnesses are so oppressed is because this Jehovah person um, is desperate to feel validated, whereas the source of life doesn't need that. She knows who she is. She doesn't need mere humans to make her feel better about herself. She already loves herself, and she wants us to love ourselves. She doesn't want us overcome with guilt. She doesn't want us to worry and to fret and to feel bad about ourselves. She loves us wherever we are, no matter what.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up a lot of good points actually. Number one, making mistakes. Jehovah's Witnesses were so afraid of making mistakes because they wanted you to pursue this level of perfection that no human can get to. And in fact, if we could get to that, this would be a very boring world to live in. You got to make mistakes to grow. You have to. That's I wouldn't get to where I am today if I hadn't made certain mistakes. I look back and in the moment it might have been bad, but in looking back now, it's like, whoa, I wouldn't be where I am today. So you got to have that opportunity to grow. That's just how life is. The way that they want you to live in this little bubble, it's just not realistic and it's not healthy. And also, like you brought out, there's other ways of interpreting what this is all about. As Jehovah's Witnesses, we have to accept a very small, narrow view of what life is and what this experience is. And when you leave the witnesses, that's your time to discover and be able to see things that we were not exposed to. We did not, like you said, you didn't even know this existed, you know? So, do you have any other things that you would say to people that are going through this waking up process? What would be your advice for them?
Um, let's see. I do have notes on this one because it's a lot of good stuff. First off, Jehovah's Witnesses thought they had all the answers. Well, when you think you have all the answers, that's quite a burden. I found that not knowing is freeing. So don't be dogmatic. Don't be inflexible. Don't um, close your mind to things that in the past you may have closed your mind to, because you might be surprised what you discover if you at least entertain the idea. Not that you have to accept it, but at least entertain the idea, because we weren't allowed to do that before. Um, the black and white thinking patterns. Um, very little in this life is black and white. Um, there are probably a very few things that are, um, but generally it's every shade of gray you can imagine. And so being dogmatic, that's Jehovah's Witness thinking. We need to rewire our brains and not be too judgmental. It frees you up when you don't have to constantly defend your belief, because it's your belief. Everybody's free to have their belief. And if somebody doesn't agree with you, that's fine. You don't need their agreement to validate what you believe, just as they don't need your validation. So let love always motivate you. Um, if you do things out of love, you are not going to be trying to hurt somebody. And if you do hurt somebody and you didn't mean to, if what you did was out of love, you will have no problem at all apologizing. And that person would be ready to accept it, I'm sure, because they would feel that it was genuine. Um, a lot of things that I've learned may sound ridiculous to the vast majority of the population, not just Jehovah's Witnesses, but that doesn't mean it isn't true or that it can't be investigated or that it's just out false. So, you know, investigate the ridiculous. You might be surprised. You might find something interesting and find a rabbit hole you might want to go down and investigate, and who knows what you'll find. Um, Even if you do have a strong disagreement with somebody about something, don't let a disagreement over opinions that really probably can't be proven damage your relationship, because we've had enough of that. Let's not perpetuate that same um, practice as we're waking up. It's waking up can be scary. I'm fortunate enough not to have been raised in it. I'm fortunate enough not to have spent a lot of years in it and experienced a lot of trauma. So it's easy for me to say, but you do yourself no favors by beating yourself up, by not seeking professional help if you need it. Um, that's the first thing I recommend for people. Don't, jump from the frying pan into the fire. Oh, well, I need to go to a church. I need to be religious. No, you don't. You have time. Get yourself well and decide what you think and believe. And then if that's what you choose to do it. If you don't. Um, we're all free moral agents. We have individual sovereignty, whether we want to recognize our own sovereignty or not. There's no rush. There's no rush. Learn who you are. Make yourself well. Get professional help from someone who deals with religious trauma if that's what you need, if you can. Not all do. But that really is the first thing. And then from there, who knows what you can do? Go back to school, um, become a minister. Who knows? We have a plethora of choices now. We're not limited to the little bubble of choices given to us from that organization. But being well is first. Being well comes first.
All very, very good advice. Very, very good advice. I think I have one more question. Because you had the experience of being POMI, which doesn't come up as often, do you have any advice for people that are stuck in that position? Because that's a strange position to be in. You're out, but you still believe what the Watchtower teaches. So therefore, you still believe that you're doomed. So what advice do you have for people stuck in that position?
Oh, pomies. Well, they're almost worse than the peemies. I think it's because of fear and guilt, because they're out and they still believe it's true. Um, and this isn't just for the pomies, this is for anybody. Um, give yourself permission to research. The organization likes to say this is all apostate driven lies. Okay, that's their right to say that. However, they're not specific usually about the lies. They'll use generalizations. And we all know for a fact the Watchtower organization is very litigious and they go to court often for copyright violation. Copyright this, copyright that. And so if they're willing to go to court over a simple copyright, but if they truly believe what is being said are lies, why don't they bring people in to court and sue them for libel and slander and that sort of thing? If they're truly lies, it should be an easy win and it would stop the lies. Once people realize that there were actual consequences for it. The fact that they don't makes you wonder, hmm, maybe it's true. And that's why they don't take them to court. But there's no harm in investigating. If something is the truth, whether it's the Jehovah's Witness belief system or anything else, it can undergo and survive scrutiny. And whether you want to accept it or believe it, whatever it is you find when you investigate, that's on you. But there's no harm in looking into it, because if you have the truth, it's not a big deal. Um, and if you're afraid of what you might find, then you already have the answer. You don't really fully believe it's the truth. And so people who are afraid to investigate, deep down, they have doubts and they're battling those doubts, and they don't want confirmation of those doubts because of fear and sunken cost fallacy or whatever their particular issue is. But research and then form your opinion when you've heard both sides. And that's for anything, not just Watchtower. Hear both sides. Use the brain that we were given, the critical thinking ability we were given, common sense we were given. Exercise those.
Yeah, that's a good one to end on right there. Yeah, please research both sides for everything, not just Jehovah's Witness stuff, for everything. There is always two sides. In our society, we are so much into pick one side or the other. That's it. Guaranteed you're going to find some truth on both sides. You just got to be open-minded enough to look into it. So thank you so much for coming on, and thank you so much for the great advice. People really need to hear that stuff.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. And like I say, my story is not really outstanding, but who knows who might be helped. That's really kind of what I want to do at this point, is move forward helping where I can. I haven't really dipped much more than a toe in as of yet, but I'm hoping to get deeper in and help people, and not just Jehovah's Witnesses, anybody who is struggling with, high control groups or other traumatic issues that they may have experienced, because there's not enough of that in the world, right? There's not enough soft places to land, non-judgmental places to go. And I'm hoping to be that at some point. I'm working on it.
I think you already are. I think you think that you're only dipping your toes. I think you're knees deep now. After this goes
Well,
live.
don't want to get too deep. This girl doesn't swim, so no,
Neither do I.
in that instance, I'll learn.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you. Well, I really hope you guys enjoyed that interview. And thank you so much to Carol for coming on and sharing your story, being vulnerable. I'm fairly sure that your story will help at least somebody out there. So thank you so much for coming on. And also, thank you so much for the great advice at the end. I mean, that is really, really solid advice, both for people that are just now waking up and for people that, have been out for a while. It can still be applied to them. So thank you so much for sharing all that really great advice. And thank you all for watching. I got plenty more on the way, especially leading up to this protest at the end of the month. So stay tuned, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.